This is Bleav In Buckeyes. I'm Bryant with All-American quarterback Chimdi Chekwa. We got a show for you guys. We got polls coming out. We got this random college football stuff to talk about, but it's gearing up. We're getting towards the end of July. We're getting close to some real football, man. But Chim, how you doing, man? How you feeling over there?
Feeling good, man. July, August is next. I'm getting a little excited, man. I could kind of smell the grass, the turf. I can smell football coming here soon. So yeah, I'm kind of pumped up, man. This summer has been, a few things happening recruiting wise. It's been relatively quiet for the most part.
Yeah.
So now that it's getting closer, I'm diving a little bit deeper into more football. I'm looking forward to watching more film and kind of seeing what to expect and lock in. How about you?
Yeah, same, man. It's funny, like I said, it happened I feel like an eerie, quiet type of summer. And I think maybe because we're the defending champions, right? So, us Buckeye fringe fan base, we don't have a whole bunch of that we complain about. We can kind of sit back and enjoy it a little bit. But things are starting to ramp up, and, it's time to kind of get ready to see it live. I think the Hall of Fame game is usually the first football you get of the year. I think it's maybe like the last day of this month. So you'll see a couple of NFL guys play some preseason. So it's, not the best ball, but it's always something, man. But gearing up for the season, the media, they came out with their poll rating the conference on who they felt would be conference champion. Just a preseason poll. But they had Penn State 1, Ohio State 2. Then you get into Oregon, Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, USC, Nebraska, Iowa, and it started to kind of mix match from there. But the first five is usually, where you see it across the nation with Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon, 1, 2, 3, Illinois, Michigan. What's your thoughts on that? Did you care? Or is it concerning that everyone's kind of picking Penn State to be that top team with all the experience returning?
Nah, I mean, I like Ohio State to be chasing instead of being chased, honestly. I think that's a better position, especially for a younger team compared to last year, who likely needs to go out there and continue to develop and build to be able to be one that's going to compete for a championship. And Penn State has the veteran team. They're the team that kind of should be in that lead spot, although you know how I feel about Penn State.
Yeah.
Penn State is Penn State, right? They won't, in my opinion, until they prove it, they're just not a team that leads the Big Ten. They are a second-tier level Big Ten team. But this past season, it proved to be beneficial to them. I think they maxed out as a second-tier Big Ten team. They got very close to being able to compete for a championship, right? and they did a good job in the offseason. So on paper, they do look to be one of the best teams in the country. They do look to be at the level of 1 or 2 in the Big Ten. But it's they just can't be. They're just one of those teams. They sign up for a loss to Ohio State and to be competitive or beat everybody else, and that's just what I expect from them this year as well. And their quarterback, who it just seems like because of who they have coming back at quarterback, that's part of it as well. He's supposed to be maybe 1, 2, 3 top 2 or 3 quarterbacks in the country. I don't see it. I just I know the raw talent is in there somewhere, the potential, but I haven't seen it materialize across the season. How in the same level to the height that's behind them. So my
I think that's
rightfully.
Yeah, it's kind of rightfully. So because everyone gripe against Penn State is the exact same gripe. They don't win the big game, right? And you're starting to talk about Drew Ayler here, and him, like you say, I think everybody's head arches number 1 with his limited time of playing, and then with Drew with all his time of playing, it's like he's definitely the number 2 guy when we start talking about rating quarterbacks in college football, let alone to the NFL as well, because it's kind of feeling that same way as well. But same for Drew. So it's like, that's Penn State. They like the quarterback, so they blame the head coach. It's for James Franklin's fault that they haven't won these big games. But, in another season, they're blaming the quarterback. All the quarterback and his limitations is the reason that Penn State couldn't get over the hump. So it kind of feels like it's one of those type of situations. But, once again, it's a preseason poll. us former guys, we don't really care too much about preseason polls, right? Like, it's, you don't want to be disrespected, but at the same time, you want to, because what type of guys you have in the locker room, but at the same time, you don't really care too much about it. You're not, upset or trying to figure out who voted for what and how that fits. Is just just one of those things that is what it is. But
Yeah,
let me get you back going. Look, you got something to say because I had something to kind of take us a little bit different to a different.
Yeah, just real quick. Penn State's just not a lead the pack type school. They're just not a lead the pack type school in that, if the hype is there, if they're expected to be number one out of the gate, if they're expected to roll through their regular season schedule, be a Big Ten champion, and go to the playoffs, they're gonna falter, and I think they falter likely earlier than they should because of that. I mean, they're a team that is better served to be, 3 or 4 and just close to being at the top. And I think it put some pressure on James Franklin in this year. I think he benefits, right? And he's been a solid coach. I don't think he should be on the hot seat or nothing like that. But I do think he benefits from not having a rival like that team up north, where when you lose to them, everybody's so passionately upset that your job is on the line unless you prove something to us, right? He could lose to Ohio State every year, and it's just like, well, he was expected to lose. This is the first year where I feel like Ohio State, coming off a national championship, has to reload, and Penn State, coming off of a playoff run, has all of the pieces in place, has spent the money, has kept some of their stars on the team, similar to what Ohio State did last year and similar to what Michigan did the year before that.
All right.
So now the pressure is on. It's like, okay, it's our turn. Michigan did it. Ohio State did it. Now in this new era of football, it's our turn. We're running the same playbook. I just don't think they can do it.
Yeah, I mean, but I think, like, if you're in the media, if you had a vote, yeah, you go ahead and vote for Penn State, right? Because you say, they've done the things that we have seen be successful in college football the last couple of years, right? Retaining your talent, which is the name of the game, right? They was able to retain their guys. Obviously, they was able to get a coach from Ohio State, a defensive coordinator, and Jim Knowles. So, they're feeling better, should be feeling better about that. He led the number 1 defense in the nation last year. So, they went about it the right way. So, yeah, if you have a vote, sure, send that vote to Penn State if you think they're the number 1 team. And obviously, Ohio State, we don't rebuild, we reload. And it'll be one of those type of years, right? We got a little inexperience at quarterback, 3 or 4 games. We expect who's taking snaps to kind of be one of the top guys in the conference, as always. Maybe even play out Drew Ayler when it comes down to the stats and in that game when we see them, because that's what we expect to see. And then in the end, you want to be number 1. In the preseason, you could really care less. But I feel like off this list, though, like, you saw the list, right? And like I said, you kind of start looking at the middle of the pack. You kind of got the USCs, Nebraska, Iowa, Wisconsin, teams like that kind of on the back half of it. I just want to kind of get your thoughts on who do you think out of this list should feel slighted and have a great potential to kind of play themselves as being a potential one of those top teams in the Big Ten that right now obviously didn't get their respect when it came to the media poll.
Yeah, in terms of feeling slighted, I'm not sure there's one that should feel slighted, honestly. I think Indiana, based on their year last year, maybe they should be up there a little bit higher, but can they repeat based on who they lost? That's to be determined. I think Illinois is up there pretty high, but I think Illinois has real opportunity to compete. I think they might be closer to Penn State than what it looks like currently. I'm not sure there's a team that should feel slighted. I think USC.
Yeah, I was gonna say USC, man. Yeah, like come on, guys. Like, jeez, man. All this money we keep hearing about, all these recruits. You got the Showtime coach and all these guys coming in. Like, it's time to show it. Like, obviously, USC went on a great run last year. And then, so it's like the back half of the season, they just kind of, they just couldn't keep it up. But they started off pretty hot and to me, it was a threat in the Big Ten. Then they got into some deep Big Ten ball and they could keep up their level of consistency. But I don't know. To me, like I say, some polls got them 7. I see them as far back as 9 or 10. Like, you got to get to at least 5 or 6 here, right? I mean,
yeah, I mean, and USC is evidence that program matters. Like coaching matters, offensive coaching matters, defensive coaching matters. How you run that program matters. There's no reason why USC should be 7th in the Big Ten. Like there's no real reason, and they have the financial support. Right? They have they made the big splash when it comes to a coach who feels like he should be on the hot seat, but I'm not sure he actually is. I'm not sure that the seat is hot at all.
They might be paying them too much money to be on.
So, that's one team that I guess they should feel slighted, but they haven't proven that they should be looked at in any. As a matter of fact, I think they've been probably overrated in the past couple years, and now the rankings are showing like you're not going to trick us again, right? Penn State might fool us, but you're not gonna fool us again. So they can't be rewarded for underachieving, and they got to prove something.
Yeah, and then that kind of brings me to the next point because, like, we're talking about this team where a team that, like I say, I'm sorry, I feel like USC, obviously, the defense has some room to improve, but should be a pretty competitive team. If I tell you about Nebraska and Dylan Raiola returning in year 2 with their coach and his success he had at the college level, coming from Baylor and on to the NFL to back to college, and they're kind of starting to feel towards the middle. And then Iowa, who always figure out ways to win games, right, when it comes to the Big Ten and things of that nature. Is that, to me, it's just a lot of big names teams that, like, in the middle or going towards the end of this Big Ten. And that's how, they got to play the games and kind of figure out how it goes from there. But does that in your mind, like, kind of take the Big Ten to the next step, right? Obviously, Ohio State wins the national title. The year before that, a little bit of asterisk, but Michigan wins the national title. We saw Big Ten teams of Ohio State play against some of these SEC schools and kind of really, didn't steal a win. Like, there was clearly the better team and went out there and won those games. With the Pac being that strong in the middle, can we get the crown now? Or can we agree that the Big Ten is the best conference when it comes to football in the nation?
The Big Ten is definitely trending that way. I think this second year of a real playoff is really going to change the discussion, right? These teams that are in the middle, if they can get a playoff nod, or not necessarily the middle, but the teams at the top, really, if they get the playoff nod and make some noise this year, I think this would be the year where everybody says, okay, last year wasn't a fluke. The year before that wasn't a fluke. The Big Ten has kind of taken the lead in college football. I do think it's to be determined, because you can have a couple years of success and things kind of just turn around on you. And some of these teams like Indiana, are they a team that can be consistent? That's going to be a challenge. A team like Illinois, who's on the rise, do they rise up and stay consistent? I think you will continue to have that 4th, 5th team in the Big Ten continue to change every year, kind of musical chairs there. But I don't know. We'll see. I think we're leaning in that direction for sure.
Yeah, but I guess I'm thinking about a different perspective, Chim, because I'm thinking about the NIL, right? I'm thinking about the dollar, right? And if you start talking about like the Big Ten and how we're positioned in the country, right? We got the West Coast, you got LA, you got Seattle, schools along the coast, you got the Midwest, you got Chicago, you got and we're Ohio, a little bit biased, but we know in Columbus, Ohio, like all the money and all the tech that's coming to Central Ohio and the spin there. Then you go out to the East Coast and you got all the old money that you have there. And the way that the Big Ten, to me, is just positioned, right? Like it's just a lot of alumni, a lot of dollars, a lot of people that really are passionate about college football. And, it's a joke, right? They say, once NIL started, things came a little bit equal when it came to paying players when it comes across college football. But it could be really, starting to show itself on the field as well when you start just looking at the scores, looking at the head-to-head matchups, who have been winning the national championship and kind of toting that trophy. I think it's a little bit more to it that, that the Big Ten may be, and I'm biased, but, not just a Big Ten thing to say we're the best conference, but something that the entire nation would kind of have to start respect if things kind of say, like you say, kind of keep going and trending in this direction.
Yeah, and these programs, I mean, you're talking about major universities with huge alumni bases. If you look up the top 10 alumni organizations or alumni base in college period, like 7 or 8 of those teams are going to be from the Big Ten. And then that doesn't include Oregon, who has a ton of money with Nike and has run a good program. So when you compare that to the SEC, I mean, you're talking about schools with smaller alumni bases, less money. You know, the cities that they're in. You compare Gainesville, Florida, to Chicago or Seattle, et cetera. So there's an advantage there. And I think the other thing that is happening with that is when you add an NIL and the fact that, you know, we have all these tools to be able to find players. Like Indiana could figure out, you know, we need a defensive tackle, we need a linebacker. We can find one at LSU, or we can find one at Alabama or Georgia who is frankly in a position where he's not going to get the playing time that he expects, and we could bring him here, develop him, and play him here. So, you know, it's not as easy for LSU as like before. I'm a kid who grew up in Louisiana, and I wanted to go to LSU growing up, but it's not as easy as before where you kept all the guys from Louisiana in the state. Now you're getting guys from everywhere now. And I think that is a benefit to the Big Ten, where the opportunity and the infrastructure and everything exists at the schools. All we need to do is make sure that we give this kid who's now thinking about this opportunity a more business-like. Now I just want to go to my favorite school. I want to go to where I'm going to get an opportunity to play. I'm going to get paid. And that could be anywhere in the country. And I don't care if it's in cold weather or I'm from the South. That doesn't matter. I'm gonna be warm in my my nice condo in the city.
Well, speaking of opportunities, we recently just lost the recruit, right? We just Ohio guy from Avon, Ohio, cornerback Jacob Weatherspoon flips his commitment from Ohio State to go to play for Bill Belichick. He wants to go to North Carolina to be a Tar Heel now, and with that, we gained a wide receiver, another wide receiver. But we got a 4-star receiver, Jaquari. I'm a butcher his name, my classic. But Jaquadin Guilford out of Fort Wayne, Indiana, lands with Ohio State. And it's funny. It's like, now, I don't know how people say this, but it said like, yeah, he kind of took less NIL money because he wanted to come and be developed by Heartline here at Ohio State. But it's kind of just interesting that, you know, like you say, with NIL, dollars kind of start to become a play, right? Yep. So once again, we get a guy in our class on Ohio, a guy that most likely grew up wanting to be an Ohio State Buckeye, and all of a sudden he's headed to North Carolina to play to be a Tar Heel, just at a kind of a bat of an eye. It's kind of starting to be rumored that, like, you know, does Ohio State has the funds like to kind of, you know, compete with some of these guys, or what's your thoughts on that, and what may be possibly going on here?
It does seem like we're losing some recruiting battles that we probably shouldn't, right? It does feel like, you know, a kid out of Ohio who already committed to Ohio State, right? So, you know, we know he wanted to go there, switching and going to North Carolina, of all places, right? I know they got Coach Belichick, and they got his 24-year-old girlfriend, Jordan Hudson, right? But I don't know what type of package they laid out to get a kid to leave Ohio to go to North Carolina. And obviously money's at play. Obviously that's a part of it. And for a recruit, that has to be a part of the consideration. You know, we talk a lot about keeping the best guys in Ohio. But more and more, it feels like just get the best guy, because, you know, you don't know who you're going to be able to keep and who you're going to be able to get. So, and then there's defensive line, being able to recruit on defensive line, money has played a factor. Some teams have been able to outbid Ohio State. And I Bleav, right, you coming off a national championship, or you committed a lot of funds to your guys, all right? A lot of it was to guys that you're keeping, but you also went and got Caleb Downs out of Alabama, where, you know, when he entered the portal, you had to compete with somebody to secure him to come to Ohio State. I think this feels like a balanced the budget time for the AD. Like, you know, we're coming off a win. If we're ever going to get in the green and keep all of our varsity sports, right? He said they're going to keep all the varsity sports moving forward, not going to lose anything in that regard. How do you do that if you're leading the pack in terms of spending every single year? That can't make the coaches happy, right? Some of the
Yeah.
coaches
No,
probably.
right. No, Coach Day is kind of, he wants to strike while the iron's hot, right? You win a national champion. You're the national championship team. You're trying to defend your national title. I know what is this is the best time for him to go walk into a kid's living room and say, "Hey, we want you to come join our program." And it's kind of funny. It's like, usually I feel like Ohio State recruiting class is like, top 3. We become national champions. It should be the easiest to recruit probably in time, and we're number 6 class. Now we're being picky because we're Buckeyes, right? We nitpick things like this. Is the 6 good enough? Probably. We got to develop the guys. We got to play from there. But it's just kind of like you say, it's a little bit interesting, right? Because we got new rules in play, right? We got the NCAA coming in with rules and stating that you only can spend XYZ. We got third parties coming in looking at some of these NIL deals, and you're already hearing that things are tentatively being rejected. We don't know what that means, right? We don't know, like, once they say something is rejected, does they now go back to the kids and say, oh yeah, we had a $1 million deal for you. It's only going to be $750 now because these things got rejected. We don't really know how that's going to work, but we know that like when the ruling came in, everyone kind of had the same budget. So that means some guys are going to follow the rules, right? Some ADs are going to say, hey, don't go out here committing XYZ because you don't have it. Where other programs might say, like, yeah, let's just see how it goes. Let's put the money out there and see if we can get this kid to come because we think he can help our program. Like you say,
it's risky.
Risky.
It's risky to go. It's risky to go into it trying to follow a rule that is uncertain, man. Right? That's funny to say, but that's the consideration you have to have. I think there has to be an approach to deal with this, right? And I think Ohio State has an opportunity to figure out that approach. Obviously, we're going to try to go get the best guys in the country, right? But we know from a financial standpoint, with every random team competing for some of these top guys, that's you're not going to be able to pay the amount of money that other schools are going to be able to pay for one individual position. Now, receiver, we seem to be good at receiver in terms of getting guys consistently. And I want to throw out the fact that when you're a receiver and you go to Ohio State, you may not need the biggest NIL deal from the school. A receiver at North Carolina doesn't have the opportunity that you have at Ohio State. At Ohio State, you can ball out and sign an endorsement deal with Adidas or Nike or Starbucks or some type of national type organization because of the level of visibility you have. So that makes up for some of that lack of NIL. But when you play corner, you're not as, you're just not as big of a player in terms of, now you can try to increase your marketing. Maybe you catch a pick 6 or something, you could use that. But I think the opportunity for an offensive player like a running back or receiver isn't the same on defense. And I think that's why the struggle is going to happen more on defense. And I think there's an opportunity for Ohio State to now start looking in their backyard and picking out some guys that may not be some of the top guys, but can develop into certain players. Obviously this guy was from Avon, Ohio, so that's kind of the backyard. I'm talking about even closer, man. Central Ohio, man. There's some players out here locally who may not be nationally ranked at the same level, but are likely guys that if they commit, they're gonna stay here, right? If they come to the school, they likely are going to transfer. They're going to compete for a position, and I like to see Ohio State work that into their approach.
Yeah, no doubt. And it's funny, man. It's like the funniest joke, like you say. It's risky to play by the rules, right? When it comes to some of this NIL stuff, but we know it's a team in the conference who know it's a risk to play by the rules, and they don't care if it's talking about on the field or off the field, man. We know that team up north, they don't care about any rule book. They just kind of go about any way possible to try to, get whatever advantage they can to try to win the game. Man, yeah, so obviously it's been pending all summer. The NCAA is supposed to be coming down with their ruling and possible sanctions to get them. But I think it was kind of big news that that came out that the Big Ten commissioner, Tony, I'm going to butcher his name, Tony Petty, wrote a letter to the NCAA basically saying, like, hey, we believe we punished Michigan enough and no additional punishment is needed due to, the 3-game suspension they did back in 23 on Harbaugh. I don't know, man. Just real quick, I guess, what's your thoughts on that? Is that the right thing to do? Because I know, I don't know, Buckeye Nation, we kind of, obviously, it doesn't matter. We don't think something should happen, but we just feel like if the NCAA is still going to be the NCAA, man, what a great time to, like, you know, slam your hammer down and actually get something done. But I don't know. What's your thoughts on that?
I think the commissioner is just trying to show that he's on the Michigan side, right? Back in 2023, I think he was the one who suspended Jim Harbaugh. He was the one who came out against that. Now it's in the NCAA's, you know, the ball's in their court to make this decision. It's not on the commission, right? Mm-hmm. So at this point, I'm not the bad guy. Hey, Michigan, I'm not the bad. Matter of fact, I'm gonna send a letter to the NCAA to let them know that what they're considering doing, they shouldn't do. Right? Mm-hmm. I'm on y'all side. So whatever they come down with, it wasn't me. We're in this together. And I think that's more what it is. It's more like, you know,
optics.
Yeah, it's just optics, in my opinion. Because at the end of the day, it's the Big Ten Conference that's one of the most powerful conferences. It's the Big Ten Conference that brings in the money. So when you start handing out punishments to an individual team, like Michigan, who's a very, very powerful team. We talk about
that's a big venue right there. That's for sure.
They got a lot of people in high places, and you want to be on their good side. You got to punish cheating and all that stuff, but you want to be on the good side. So if you're the commissioner and you actually don't have you're not the one who's doing the punishment for the optics. Let me send in a letter and make sure Michigan sees me as a good guy. And right my wrongs from the past when I suspended Harbaugh.
He trying to keep his name out that Michigan lawsuit that might come down.
Exactly.
That they always threaten whenever they say they're going to catch your punishment, man. But, man, that's our show for today. Obviously, we'll keep talking about this, bringing it up. We're probably about a week or so out of camp, official camp starting here at Ohio State for our Buckeyes, and obviously we'll be bringing you news there. Also, we wanted to mention that we're going to dive into that Texas game. We're going to go live here probably the evening of August 7th. So that's a couple of weeks from here, and kind of break down at least the first half of that Texas game on that evening, as everybody catch it again another week or so, that second half, and just kind of go what we see. Once again, we're expecting it's a lot of the same players here when it comes to coaches. We got an angry Texas team who just lost to us in the playoffs. So, a lot of things will probably repeat themselves when you talk about scheme and how they're going to go about attacking each other. And we'll be bringing that to you guys and break that down. Follow us, YouTube, Spotify, Apple. Tune in, ask questions as always. We always love interacting with you guys because, heck, you guys make the show. And we're going to end this like we always do, Chim, with a nice OH.
Ayo.
Go Bucks. Talk to you guys soon.
Go Bucks.